All right, hi, this is Timeless Tides. I'm Dave, and this is Joe. So
Hi.
we're going to touch on some real estate around the Point Pleasant, Ocean County area and tie in real estate and history together.
Terrific.
Okay, so
And
yeah,
topic.
today is going to be the Point Pleasant Canal. Originally, it was the Manasquan Bayhead Canal.
Okay.
Do you know that?
I did not know that.
Okay, so the Manasquan Canal. What do you think? What are your thoughts about the canal?
I never gave it much thought. It was always there. It was something that we had to get over to get to the beach, but never really gave it much thought. Never gave it much thought as to where it came from, why it came to be. I always thought, growing up in Point Pleasant, it was always there.
To me, it was just a passage, just for the boats.
Yeah.
That's it. So, what happened was, after the Revolutionary War, with the naval blockades of from the British, and then that was kind of talked about, but then the War of 1812, and we had the blockades again. And after that,
So what was the conversation that they had?
they needed a passage. The Intercoastal Waterway was kind of born at that point. Their intention was New Jersey down to the Gulf of Mexico
To avoid
so
the
they
British
could get
blockades.
so we could get troops, supplies, also for people to navigate safely. But nobody had boats like they do now. I mean, you had I guess you had some pleasure boats, but then you had to have a whole crew with the sails and But it was interesting that came up for that reason, and it wasn't built
Until
the 1900s.
Wow.
And luckily we prevailed, or else we'd all be speaking English. You know what I mean?
The proper English. Right?
You bloody fool. But it's interesting. So
that was a thought for well over 100 years.
oh yeah,
Wow.
yeah, it came up, and it was approved actually 1833. It was all approved. The original canal was supposed to go through the 4 lakes along the coast. Go ahead.
Lake of the Lilies, I know, is by Elizabeth.
Yep.
Lake Louise is
Lake Louise is the other side,
the
Broadway.
first one, and
Little Silver Lake.
Little Silver Lake. And the bridge was supposed to, or the intercoastal waterway was supposed to go through.
It was supposed to go through there, but it called for like 8 bridges along that route.
Now, you were saying earlier you had a thought why they decided against that.
Well, it was the money. It was definitely the money. $155,000 in 1833 versus $5,000.
And it wasn't a desirable location?
I just learned that this week as I was reading, that the land between the soon-to-be railroad and the ocean was not as desirable as you would think.
And I'm wondering if the reason that was, Dave, is that they realized it was too close to the ocean, and maybe the ocean would just overflow into the canal, and it basically defeated the purpose.
Yeah, that probably
So
could have
maybe
been a
they
thought.
needed to bring it in closer inland.
Yeah, that could have been a reason too, and good thing. What would the real estate be like there?
Well, if it was built between the lakes, I don't know.
I mean, right now, it's
Well, now.
more desirable to be in Point Pleasant on the east side of the canal.
Sure.
A lot of
Point
people,
Pleasant. And
want
Point
to.
Pleasant Beach, yeah.
Some people just don't care, but they want to be on
There
the
would not
eastern
have been,
side.
there would not have been too much eastern side of the canal.
Yeah.
If it was built by the lakes, right?
Yeah, it would be part of the barrier island. Point Pleasant Beach is
There you
technically
go.
the northern part of that barrier,
Right.
but now you have the canal up there. So, but waterfront, I keep thinking you're carting your kids to the beach, and now you have to go over 2 or 3 blocks, and then you got to wait for the party boats to go through. Then you get to the beach, and how frustrating would that be today if they actually did that? Plus, 8 bridges. You'll have 3 or 4 bridges open at one time. If boats are coming in both directions, that would be a nightmare.
Yeah.
So whatever reason it is,
They decided correctly where to put it, I guess.
yeah, I think so, right?
Yeah.
So the real estate would have been really cool over there, though.
Yeah, but again, I don't think there wouldn't have been too much east of the
I know.
canal. What do you have? A couple of blocks? 1 block, maybe? Not even.
Yeah, it could have been. Yeah,
A couple of those lakes
2 or 3 blocks,
are right
maybe.
up to Ocean Avenue, so you really wouldn't have. And again, going back to my point, I think maybe that's why they decided against that. You get a high tide there with storms, and you're just going to, it's going
Good
to be
storm.
washing right
Yeah.
into the canal. So
But I was shocked when I forgot what I was reading, but the land just was not as desirable. I'm thinking for that reason.
Right,
You build
right.
a house, and next thing, a hurricane comes at you. You don't know when they're coming, and back then you have no idea.
Sure.
So then you have to rebuild. So maybe that was part of it. If we had known, right?
Right.
Some people did. Some people, Captain Arnold, I think, bought property there. A few people.
So while it was a thought for well over 100 years, when did they actually start digging out the canal?
1830s.
Oh, they started.
No. I'm sorry. Digging, you said, right?
Yeah.
It was authorized in 1833. All the plans kept coming. It kept changing. And it wasn't until 1908 they started in the
Last one?
No, why am I blank?
The Barnegat?
No, down South Jersey in Cape May. Cape
okay.
May. Duh. Yeah. It's stuck like it. Cape May.
Right. So they started from south to north.
Yeah, and right when they were finished in 1916, God, my dates are all over the place. 1816, they started building the canal on the bay side.
1816 or 1916?
1960. Did I say
1860?
1860?
You said
18.
1860.
No,
I'm
I'm
here-
all confused. 18.
I am here to keep him straight.
I'm sorry. 1916. That's what I'm trying. 1916, they started building on the bay side. You know what? I'm looking at so many dates. Everything is 1816. It started here, and then it slowed down and actually stopped when we entered World War One.
They stopped dredging.
Yep, stopped
Okay.
dredging.
And where were they at that time? Do you know?
I don't know where they
did not
were.
make it up to the Manasquan.
No, they weren't that far yet because it was still not till 1925 when it opened. So I'm thinking they started dredging. I don't think there was water in it yet, and they broke that side first when it was finally completed. And they built the bridge on 88 first. It was over a dry canal.
Right.
So it was quite
So
interesting.
the 88 bridge was before the Loveland Town Bridge.
Yes,
Okay. And the Loveland Town Bridge.
I'm pretty sure on that.
Okay. I would think, though, if they're coming from south to north, the Loveland Town would be first now.
Yeah, but I think
And if memory serves me correct, going way back, between Dave and I, we have about 110
yeah.
years
Oh God, you think
collectively,
about
and-
that?
yeah.
Yes.
So if memory serves me correct, the Loveland Town was a much older looking bridge back then than the 88 bridge, no?
Yeah, they had a collapse
Yeah.
in '64.
So, I'm curious if the Loveland Town was the first one. But regardless, they finally made the connection between the Barnegat and the Manasquan, what year?
They made the connection through. That was in 1925.
Wow.
Yeah, it was something. I mean, can you imagine being part of that? There was a lot of controversy. A lot of people didn't want it
Right,
because on the bay side you had fresh water.
right.
You had the Matita Conch,
Yep.
the the bay
Beaver
Dam Creek,
Right. All supplying fresh water.
fresh water,
Right, yep.
and you don't have tides
Right.
the same, if at all. I'm not sure how that works, but you did now. You do when you had that
Sure.
break.
Well, you were at the northernmost part of the Barnegat there, right?
Yeah, they had Herbert's Creek
Okay,
would feed the Loveland Town area,
gotcha.
and then the canal kind of messed that
Okay,
up.
okay. So that was all fresh water, right?
Yes.
At that. And what did they used to have a fishery there? Or
There was
something?
it was a lot of there's a pretty good industry there. Imagine bass fishing there.
That's
that would have been
crazy.
cool.
Yeah,
Perch.
Yeah. So now they opened that up between the northern part of the Barnegat Bay and the Manasquan, which was saltwater. And I guess you had a rush of salt
Yeah.
water into the Barnegat and had an ecological catastrophe.
Yeah. Oh my God, can you imagine? Can you imagine Greta these days?
Yeah.
Oh my God, she would have a fit. The lies.
But so what were some of the issues that they had to get over with the opening of that? They had some shoaling or something like that.
The river, all of a sudden, they had a lot of shoaling in the inlet. The inlet wasn't where it is now. It kind of cut left through the Manasquan area and then out, so it wasn't a straight run.
Gotcha.
So it did close for a while, for a period of time, and that's when they built the jetties.
Yeah.
Before those crazy jetties they have now.
With the big boulders, right?
The
They just
boulders.
have boulders.
Yeah.
And what do they call
Well, the white ones
what are they called?
that they in the 80s I worked at Jenkinson's, and
Yeah.
they had senior citizens as the beach badge guys at the gate, and they used to teach me a lot, and they said he knew all about it. He was an engineer or something. They were called dolos.
And we used to call them jacks.
They look like
resemble
jacks,
right?
Yeah.
But it was definitely a different look back, with the just the boulders, the big granite boulders they had there with the
It
jetty.
looks so much better with those, but
Yeah. But they replaced it for some reason. So when that opened up so the two bridges were put in place back in the 30s, is that correct?
20s was the
20s?
because they had to be open
Right.
around when they opened it up. And I think the 88 area, I forgot the name of that road at the time, but it was a popular road. That's probably why they did that one first.
Right.
I'm pretty certain
Yeah,
that
I'm
one was
just
the
going
first
by
one.
memory that Loveland Town Bridge, and you got off that bridge and it had a big bend in
A
it.
bend.
Right. And there were some tremendous swirling waters in that canal.
That went
back
on
then.
for such a long time, and it was
long
worse
time.
before.
Yep.
Now, there were no bulkheads on the canal.
Oh, it was just beachside? The beach? on both
Yeah,
sides?
they did add them. I think it was around the 30s. They did that. They added wooden bulkheads. Even that wasn't perfect.
Right.
You had issues with. They were concerned with the base of, I think, the Bridge Avenue bridge. Maybe that's why it was so weak. They had issues over there. They were worried about it being undermined, and they started dropping boulders in there,
Which added to the problem.
which added to the problem. They had rapids in some areas.
I do remember times back in the 70s. When did they start building the new bridges? Back in the early 80s? Or
74 was the Bridge Avenue Loveland Town Bridge.
was it?
Yeah, it opened 74 because you had, I think it was 74, maybe 72. But even though
Yeah, I
you
do
had
remember. You are correct.
64, you had the collapse of the original bridge.
Yep.
And they repaired that. In fact, there's a picture I'll post. You could see the difference in the railing. All of a sudden on the western side, it's a little different. So you could see that.
Yep.
And it shows the curve, too, when you go over.
So thinking back, I do remember I was, dare I say, I was still in high school when they replaced that bridge, and we used to go there. It was higher, so now we had an area to go sledding. And later came the 88 bridge. But I think it was at that time when they started to replace those bridges that they started to remove those boulders to make that water.
Yeah, they had to move the boulders out of there.
Right.
They had
because I remember specifically, several times, but I remember specifically.
They did a new bulkhead in the 60s. I think it was the 60s, the steel.
And you used to see some sailboats, they were powered to get through the canal, but they would actually, the water was so turbulent in there that they would take the sailboats. And I remember vividly one of the sailboats being turned sideways, crashing right into the metal fence up top and stuff. But
it was tough
yeah.
to navigate that because you had the pilings for the bridges.
Yep.
Well, the 88 bridge at that
Yep.
time up until 86.
It wasn't that wide.
And that caused problems within itself.
Yeah.
But you're in a sailboat. There has to be worse than.
So now going back, before the bridges and the canal was put in, we're talking about the real estate and what real estate would have been like, and who would buy where if there was no canal there right
There's
now.
no canal, yeah.
You would, where would people live?
I asked that to a few people, boaters especially, but yeah, if you're looking for a waterfront house, and we did not have that canal, where would you live? Because you have instant access to the ocean, or you have an hour and a half, 3 hours in a boat when you're fishing before and after. I'd imagine would be pretty hard to tolerate.
Right. To get out to the ocean.
You can't wait to get out there. An hour and a half. Oh my God! Holy cow!
So now would that have an effect of values of homes in Bayhead Mataluking on the Barnegat side? Values of the homes, yeah, values of the homes on the Matasquan side, where they had quick access to the ocean. I'm sure there's
Yeah,
difference, right?
it's tough. Depends what you're looking for, right?
Yeah.
I asked the attorney we were just working with on a deal. I happened to ask him, and I don't think I finished the sentence, and he answered. He said the river. He's the fisherman. I would live on the river.
Wants to get out to the ocean,
Yeah,
right?
just wants that access.
So, thinking about it with values, so there would be a tremendous difference in valuations. If we didn't have the canal, the northernmost part of the Barnegat, which would be Bayhead and Mataluking,
Yep.
right, on the eastern side.
It'd be fresh water. It'd be better on your boat and your jet skis
be
and
fresh
all that.
water, but would you be paying less there because you had an hour and a half to get to the Barnegat Inlet?
That's a good one, but it depends on who's buying now.
Right.
I think now it doesn't matter. You could be anywhere. You could be on any place. And back in the day when they built the canal, you're not going to take your rowboat down to Tice's Shoal.
Right. No.
I mean, imagine that.
Yeah.
Bring your wife. Hey, you're rowing.
Yeah.
But it's an interesting thought. I think about it a lot.
But interesting. So that canal, the intercoastal, that's part of the intercoastal waterway. Now, the original design of that, or again for military purposes, was to go from here, Matasquan, the northernmost part,
Yep.
correct? And the southernmost part was supposed to wind up where?
Gulf of Mexico.
Gulf of Mexico there, but it is actually goes all the way down into probably south of Fort Lauderdale.
You said that. You said around Fort Lauderdale.
Very
guess it
interesting. Very interesting. And it's had a huge impact in the neighboring communities. It's a beautiful, part of Point Pleasant Beach, and so.
I mean, there's a lot of lagoons on the southern end over here.
Yeah.
Going from Point Pleasant all the way down. So, and once you get to one point, you're not going to need the canal to go out to the. You just got to know how to navigate through that crazy inlet down in
Barnegat.
the Barnegat.
Yeah. So a pretty interesting part of the history of Point Pleasant and Point Pleasant Beach.
Yeah.
And
1964, by the way, they changed the name from the Manasquan Bayhead Canal because it wasn't in either one to the Point Pleasant Canal.
Wow.
Yeah, it was really cool. And then also what happened was the canal divided the town.
From?
Point Pleasant and West Point Pleasant. Because
West
Point
Point
Pleasant became its own town. We incorporated it in 1920, 1921. I got to look back. From Brick. We were in Brick.
Right.
Point Beach.
Which
was
a lot of
first.
people don't know, historically, all of these towns, Bayhead, Mataluking, Point Beach, Point Borough, were all part of Bricktown.
It was actually it was Shrewsbury before then.
I did not know that.
And it was Monmouth County.
I'm learning with you.
It's, it was Shrewsbury encompassed all this area. Then they created Ocean County, drew that line. It was Brick. And then Point Beach, Manasquan, Mantaloking, and then Point Barrow. They separated from Brick, and then they had a tax problem. It's
To further affect the real estate valuations and stuff. So moving forward from here in future podcasts that Dave and I are going to put together, we're going to bring tidbits of historical facts to you guys regarding towns in the Jersey Shore area.
Yeah.
Dave is much more of a historian than I am. Unfortunately, I'm a historian for biological reasons. So I've been in Point Pleasant for 55 years.
All right.
I've been in Point
I'm
Pleasant.
53 now. You have to be more than that. 55, that's it?
That's it. I
right.
came here when I was 1.
You
No, I
lie.
didn't.
Yeah, it was,
I
was
parents,
5.
Yeah, my parents moved us down here the year after the riots in Newark. So I've been down in Point Pleasant since 1967.
all right.
So your buddy?
Yeah, so I have a buddy that has a boat. He's docked over at the Beacon 70. I asked him this question, and he's still scratching his head. Like, oh, God, what would I do if I didn't have the canal? He likes the restaurants over on the river.
Right.
And he likes also to cruise through the bay.
Right. And I think the bay is used by boaters, which I'm not, more for your activities, right? You're going tubing, you're going rafting, you're going water skiing, jet skiing. You don't see much of that in the Matasquan.
Yeah, you do. It was not as big of an area.
Right? Yeah.
There's a bigger wake zone there.
I guess you're using the Matasquan more for going out to your restaurants up in Point Beach and headed out to the ocean, right?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's cool. So I'm wondering if if you have, what do you think? Like, without the canal, where would you live? Where would you dock your boat? Or if you're one of those trailer people that just dump it wherever you want to go. I think you'd see a lot more of that.
Probably.
Than pay for depending on the size of your boat. But this wasn't a thing. Boats weren't that important in people's lives when they planned all this.
When they planned it. It
So
was planned for military purposes, and
yeah, now life has gotten so like, hey, it's so much fun.
right.
So
Dave, if people want to comment about this blog, where do they go do that?
disconnect. We'll have our email is here. It's going to
Okay.
be located in right. I'll put it right on the screen here.
Okay.
Yep, and it'll all be in the notes. But it's it'll be like the agent notes in the MLS. Nobody
Gotcha.
reads them.
Right. So we're going to probably do another one of these in a couple of weeks. I don't know if Dave has an idea what.
I do. I have some ideas. There's
Okay.
a few. I have a few blogs on my site that I would like to touch on. I have some that are in the pipeline, so to speak.
Okay, and your blog, where can people see that?
Buy, sell, love, thejerseyshore.com.
There you go.
I have some there.
And when you go there, just ask Dave in the blog how you reach me.
Yeah. No, we'll figure all that. Not to worry. Yeah, I got to sleep at night. You know what I mean? So
Yeah, I got you.
it's all good.
Well,
All right. So get back to me. What us? What would you do if you didn't have the canal? Where would you dock your boat?
and don't be afraid to reach out through, obviously, your first point of contact right now is going to be Dave. But
Yeah, you get a good Joe Mangiafico.
right. But don't be afraid to reach out if you have any questions about real estate at the Jersey Shore.
Absolutely.
I venture to say that Dave and I, with our collective history, probably know just about every nook and cranny of Point Beach, Point Borough, Brick, Brielle, Matasquan. Yeah. So.
And flood zones are very, very important.
Flood zones.
We'll get into that.
Flood zone expert.
In some of these, you do a lot. You know a lot with that, but
Yeah.
every deal we have, we learn a little bit more.
Yeah.
So,
Till next time.
all right.
We'll see you soon.
Thank you.